What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Be sure to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. So first of all, I'm gonna say this at the end, but I'll say it at the beginning anyway. Hope everyone is, gonna dive into some turkey on Thursday, and there are people that don't like turkey. So if you got ham or chicken or whatever the fuck you eat, hope you enjoy it with your family, your friends, and whoever else you celebrate with. But let's talk some football. Obviously, we got all of the stuff ready for a preview pod, which is very uncharacteristic, unorthodox for a Wednesday. But at the same time, with that being said, it's Thanksgiving and it's also a Thursday game, so it's not like it's going to be put out on a Thursday when everybody's with their families and stuff. Put this out at 12:30 on a Wednesday, the day before, and hopefully everybody's off on Wednesday. At least I. But with that being said, let's get into first thoughts. Obviously, we do have an interview once again. It is with Tom Ryle of Blogging the Boys, which is the SB Nation site for the Dallas Cowboys. But short week for the Giants, short week for the Cowboys, but obviously this podcast is more focused on the Giants because it's on the Giants channel and all that other stuff. Ton of injuries. And these next few games are going to be an evaluation of how well this coaching staff can adjust with these injuries. Now, obviously, it's not going to be all their fault if we lose some of these games. It's not going to be all their fault. Sometimes you can realistically blame injuries, but at the same time, you have to learn to adjust. And if you're not doing well with the pieces and it's just noticeable that you're not putting them in the best position to succeed, then it's your fault. But if you ask me, what am I more worried about this game? The offense or the defense? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm more worried about the defense. And that's not something I really have said all season. I've been talking about the offense's inconsistencies and all this other stuff. We all know the main reason why is Adoree Jackson. And I ripped Brian Dable on Monday, ripped him on Tuesday. I'm going to rip him again because Adoree Jackson should have never been the punt returner. But he is out for a few weeks. Now, they say he's been feeling better, but you're not going to sit here and force him to play when he's quote-unquote feeling better. He has to feel at least close to 100%, and he's not there right now. So we don't even know who's going to be the starting corners, which is quite sad. Your slot corner is Darnay Holmes. It does not help that Xavier McKinney is not healthy. He's on IR with the hand injury, I think. Yep. Then you got your safeties, Dane Belton, Jason Pinnock, and what's the other one? I'm forgetting Julian Love. Julian Love is awesome, by the way. Loved his comment on Zach Wilson's bullshit. But just that was a side note. I would activate Terrell Burgess if I'm smart and if I'm the Giants. Because why not get a fourth safety in there? Terrell Burgess was solid. He could play the nickel. He could play a couple of different positions for the Rams. Why not show him up against the Cowboys? I mean, we'll see what happens. We don't know what elevations they're going to make. They made the Lawrence Cager elevation, but he's out of elevations. They moved him onto the active roster. They signed Nick Vanette. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. Maybe they activate an offensive lineman, which is really rare. There's already been a report out there that says Landon Collins is not going to play this week. So who are you going to elevate? Once again, becomes the question. It just becomes the question automatically. Because you do need some back-end support, and you really don't have that, to be honest with you, on the practice squad other than young cats. Landon Collins is obviously a linebacker now. You take a look at Zion Gilbert. I was thinking of Zion McCullum, who I believe is with the Cowboys. Zion Gilbert, he's young. You're not putting him out there against the Cowboys. He will get stuffed with a turkey. You're not putting Trenton Thompson out there. They have not called his name name or number at all during the season, so that's just not something you're doing. Maybe Ryder Anderson for extra beef. That's something I wouldn't be opposed to. Some other guys you could elevate. You could elevate Pimpleton. I mean, just get somebody as a real punt returner rather than Richie James trying to throw a game away from you. Maybe Andre Miller. I don't know. But there's a lot of ones you could elevate. You could elevate Robert Foster, who's a minimal threat. There's a lot of ways you go. Also, Vernon Butler, who you could activate as well. He might be just as valuable as Justin Ellis, but who knows? So the real, I would say, image of the game for the Giants is just adjusting defensively with the injury bug. Adjusting defensively. Offensively, as we'll get into, it's going to be run first. It's going to be the way the New York Giants have played this season and really have emphasized the run game this season. Every game has been run first except for the first game, and then they figured out, okay, we could run it with Saquon Barkley. And then, everything changed from there. But we'll see, because Dallas looks like a pretty bad run defense, right? But guess what? You stack that box with Leighton Vander Esch, Jabril Cox, Damone Clark, and some of these other cats. Suddenly it changes. And the Giants are dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. I would put in Nick Gates either way. Feliciano's injured, Feliciano's not injured. No. Gates needs to be the starting center for the rest of the season. You need to make a statement out there. Not necessarily in terms of accountability. You could attribute that, but Gates is younger. Gates is more agile. He's more aware, too. I don't know if everybody saw that one clip. We were going over it on the Boys in Big Apple podcast where Anzalone was blitzing, but Feliciano decided to go try to block Cager's guy, and Cager already had him blocked, but Anzalone blitzes right up the middle, and Daniel Jones has to throw it away. So that just shows you the amount of awareness and just the poor play coming from John Feliciano. It's really been that way all season. Glowinski could be exchanged for Ben Bredesen at some point, but I'm not really focused on that right now. I'm focusing on this week. So I think the starting line is going to be Thomas, Zudu, Gates, Glowinski, and Tyree Phillips. I don't see why Tyree Phillips wouldn't go, but if he doesn't go, it's Matt Parrott, which is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I mean, he got a large amount of reps against the Cowboys last year when he was playing right tackle, subbing in for Solder, who subbed in for Thomas. It was a whole different thing. But what I also want to see on offense real quickly before we go into the injury report and all these different things is what can they do in the passing game. Darius Slayton, we know who he is. We know he's probably going to be the number one target. Are you going to try to involve Cager? Are you going to try to involve Tanner Hudson? Are you going to involve Isaiah Hodgins? How much is Kenny Galladay going to be a factor? See who you could play against. Or I should say, see who they can play against, but see who they don't game plan against too. So let's go to the injury report real quick. Daniel Bellinger is out. I think they also ruled out Adoree Jackson. Fabian Moreau is a game time decision. I have the tweet to be exact. So Fabian Moreau is a game time decision. I'm just trying to take a look here. Fabian Moreau, Evan Neal, and John Feliciano game time decisions. So I would not play Neal this week. Also, Azeez Ojulari is not getting activated for Thursday, which honestly is a smart decision because you don't want to go out there and have a risk in that case. Save him for Washington. Save Bellinger for Washington. Save Ojulari for Washington. That's going to be a big game. More big than anyone really sees it as. Hopefully it doesn't get flexed, because if it gets flexed, well, actually, no, it would have gotten flexed already, but, Anyway, as for the Cowboys, and there's also a bit of a bug going around the locker room illness-wise. Thomas has an illness. Graham Gano had an illness. It's weird. I'm trying to think anyone else had an illness. I don't think so. But anyway, DeMarcus Lawrence missed his second straight practice with a foot injury. I haven't seen anyone like officially ruled out yet. Obviously, they're 2-3 hours behind us in time, at least at the time of this recording. I don't know if they get the extra practice day Wednesday, but anyway, I think we'll play. Illness and foot injury. Anthony Barr missing his second straight practice after missing the game on Sunday with a hamstring injury. I'm going to guess he doesn't go. Terrell Basham didn't practice due to an illness. Same thing with Dante Fowler. Maybe Fowler plays. Hankins, injury. Nope. That's an illness. And then Kelvin Joseph, illness. So definitely something is going around that locker room. I don't know if it will sideline too many guys. I know, at least in my opinion, I think DeMarcus Lawrence will go. I don't think he's going to sit out this game against a rival where he could just try to dominate Tyree Phillips. They'll have to game plan better for him this game. Help him out with the chipping of Chris Myrick. They need to use Chris Myrick more. I don't care if he's, not as flashy as Tanner Hudson or Lawrence Cager in the receiving game. Use him. Because, you know what? At least you have that block and release ability that holds a little longer than a guy like Lawrence Cager or Tanner Hudson. So, let's break into the 2022 stats and analytics. The Giants are 19th in total yards per game, total offense, 28th in passing offense, 4th in rushing offense, and 21st in points per game. You look at the defensive side of the ball, 17th in total yards per game, 15th in 15th against the pass, 25th against the run, 13th in terms of points per game. I'm off today. 29th in pass percentage, 4th in run percentage, 29th in pass percentage on first down, 4th in run percentage on first down. You take a look at the defensive analytics. They're first in blitz percentage, which is probably going to stay that way the rest of the season, depending on how they take these few games. 10th in pressure percentage and 23rd in sacks. You go to the Cowboys side of things, and, well, offensively, they're 9th in total yards per game, 22nd in passing offense, 8th in rushing offense, 7th in points per game. Defensively, they're first in the total yards per game, points per game, and passing defense categories. They're 26th against the run, though. They're 26th in pass percentage, 7th in run percentage, 22nd in pass percentage on first down, 8th in run percentage on first down, 12th in blitz percentage, 1st in pressure percentage, and 1st in sacks. So what are some things to look for with this game entirely? We'll go into that in just a second. I would say more of a passing emphasis from Dallas. They have a ton of weapons, obviously. Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. They got some solid rookie tight ends as well that are not usually factored in the mix, but can always stick out there as well. I thought Hendershot had a nice game against the Giants. This first time it was Monday Night Football. But why am I saying passing emphasis from Dallas compared to a run emphasis? It kind of matches up with the things to look for. Number 2, soft zone blitzes. The Giants are going to have a very diminished, depleted secondary. We don't know who the starting corners are. Hopefully, best case scenario, it's Nick McLeod and Rodarius Williams. But Rodarius Williams wasn't very good against the Lions. Cordell Flott wasn't very good either. But you're going to have to find the best of the worst in that scenario. You have Holmes in the slot and McLeod. He's at least capable. But it's not like, you could go a full game with him as your number one corner in a, best situation. This is the worst situation you probably planned for. But more of a passing emphasis from Dallas. That's what I think. Manipulate that secondary. If you get pressure, Dak's just going to roll out the pocket and throw it. That's my worry. He's done that in the past against the Giants, like 2018, I remember. In that game that was in December. And, we were just trying to win the last game of the season just for, shits and giggles sake. And every time Dak rolled out, he threw it to Blake Jarwin. It ended up being a touchdown. And we were sending blitzes. We were helping out and doing all this other shit. I mean, they were playing some of the non-starters on the O-line. So that's why Olivier Vernon got like 3 sacks that game. But Um, I just think it's going to be more of a passing emphasis. Now, if they do find some stitch with the run, they'll definitely run the football. But I think the Giants, hot take, I think the Giants will be better against the run than they will against the pass this game. I think because Crowder and Jalen Smith, now you look at it kind of in a body format. I think Jalen Smith and Tay Crowder are better fits to go against Zeke Elliott, but the speed of Micah McFadden can go up against the speed of Tony Pollard. So you have to mix and match. There's no Austin Calitro because he's probably going to be inactive, which he should be. He's a healthy scratch every game. He's not a very good linebacker. We know that. He was just a preseason star. But I just expect more of a passing emphasis from Dallas and attempted ground and pound from New York. I mean, I don't think that the O-line issues and Wan'Dale Robinson changed much of anything. We still looked at this wide receiver core as very poor. We still looked at this O-line as, a work in progress, for a lack of better words, and, less of a negative word on it. But I still think they're going to go with the ground and pound. They recognize, okay, well, they're not very good against the run. I think, listen, I know I have my points about the Giants being a run-first offense. I'm not a fan of it personally. I know we have limited pieces and personnel, but at some point you got to move with balance. And, I'm more okay with balance rather than just running the football down their throat, because I think it takes time, possession, all these different things. But you have to do it in a way of two things where you cannot give away that you're running the football. So, putting Nick Gates in there and putting Chris Myrick in there. I mean, it's fine, but it works if you get a lot of yards out of it. That's how I see it. Now, how also you can flip that argument upside down, do a 180, is if you put Lawrence Cager and Tanner Hudson in there. They're not blocking well. They are not blockers. They are receiving specialists. So you have to find a happy medium. And I feel like you have to find a happy medium at some point just overall during this game with the offense. Just overall. Passing, throwing the football, doing whatever the fuck you please. With that being said, we move on to the players to watch. Dak Prescott. He's got a good completion percentage since coming back. Obviously, more of the offense has been catered towards the run. 67.8 completion percentage, 1,132 yards, about 226.4 yards per game. That's not great. Obviously, that's better than what our quarterback is doing. Just saying the facts out there, it's on paper. So 7.4 yards per throw, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, only 7 sacks taken in 5 games, which really says something about the offensive line. You take a look at their rushing attack with Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard, 701 yards on 118 carries, 5.9 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. I think he's had 6 runs of 20 or more yards. Maybe more than that, who knows, but he's just got breakaway speed. Ezekiel Elliott, 485 yards on 124 attempts, 6 touchdowns, 1 run over 20. Longest was 27, so that's probably where that comes from, 3.9 yards per carry. So he is more of the smash mouth running back at this point for the Cowboys. Just run it right up the middle, in the red zone. You're probably not running it in with Pollard. You're probably running it with Zeke Elliott. And he had a touchdown on the Giants in the Week 3 matchup. I think Pollard may have as well, but to be honest, I don't quite remember. Now you take a look at the receiving core. Overall, not just receivers, but tight ends as well. CeeDee Lamb leads that, 5 touchdowns, a total of 751 yards on the year, 12.9 yards per reception. Noah Brown is number 2, but Dalton Schultz is catching up quickly, 384 yards, 1 touchdown, 13.7 yards per reception. Dalton Schultz, 9.6 yards per reception, 279 yards, 1 touchdown. Tony Pollard is a great receiving back, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got like 120 yards or something, like 100 some odd yards against the Vikings. 11.6 yards per reception. And then Michael Gallup, who's been factoring in, he's been, coming back a little bit. 211 yards, 11.1 yards per reception to go along with 1 touchdown. So you take a look at the defensive side of the ball, which honestly scares me more. In a way, and I know I opened the show with, well, the defense for the Giants is more worrisome than the offense of the Giants, but these guys get it done. This is probably the top unit in the league, outside of maybe the New York Jets. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's had a good season. 3 of the sacks were accumulated against Evan Neal the last time. I know he's on the injury report with an illness and an injury, but I just don't see him sitting out a Thanksgiving game against the Giants where he get a chance to beat the crap out of us again. I'm just going to be fair. 6 sacks, 44 tackles, 13 pressures, 8 tackles for a loss, 2 forced fumbles, and 8 quarterback hits. You move to the star linebacker, who is also on the injury report, but I think he'll play as well. And, I kind of jinxed something. It's not an official jinx because it hasn't happened yet. Game hasn't happened yet either, but Micah Parsons really has never broken out against the Giants. I think he had 1 sack the last time, but we'll see what happens this game. Very well could, make us shit our pants. 10 sacks on the season, 47 tackles, total of 26 pressures, 11 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles, and 19 quarterback hits. Dorrance Armstrong, I think he was like a 5th-round pick a few years ago. He actually got a forced fumble on Daniel Jones on that Monday night game in 2019. It was like garbage time. But anyway, 7 sacks, 21 tackles, 13 pressures, 6 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and 10 quarterback hits. Move to another guy who Dan Quinn had in Atlanta for a little bit, I believe. 2020 at least, not 2021, because 2020 was the year he got booted. But 5 sacks, 15 pressures, 20 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 1 forced fumble. Now you move to the corner room. Anthony Brown doesn't scare me too much, but, he does have a nose for the ball on occasion. He's got very mid statistics. Trayvon Diggs, he's had a solid year. His completion percentage is up compared to years prior, 62.3, 438 yards allowed, 2 touchdowns, 77.4 passer rating, but you also got to add in the 3 interceptions. One of them coming when David Sills decided to slip on a route. I do wonder who's going to play the slot, though, for the Dallas Cowboys because obviously Jordan Lewis is on IR. Might be Deron Bland, I guess, and also Kelvin Joseph was on the injury report, so you might want to attack that slot, but I guess it's going to be Richie James in the slot, so it's going to be receiver against corner, unless they place Brown or Diggs in the slot, so we'll see what happens there. Moving on to questions to answer, then keys to win, and a prediction, and then we'll go to the interview. Will Daniel Jones be properly protected? That is interesting, but this is going to be Josh Azudu's first game against their interior, and their interior is very solid. Osa Odigizua, he's pretty good. He's got 2 sacks on the season. He's got 5 tackles for loss. There's some other guys in that defensive interior that can really do damage. They could also try to pull stunts and see whether Azudu has learned to pick up stunts or not. So there's that. Nick Gates, I don't see any problem with other than cohesion possibly being from the interior. Mark Lewinsky, I think there's going to be worry there, but mostly comes to the right side of the offensive line if I'm being completely transparent. Tyree Phillips or Matt Parrott. I mean, Matt Parrott was meh in pass protection. A little worried about him. If he plays, Tyree Phillips, he's been solid. Doesn't mean he's been great, but he's been solid. Nothing outstanding. So, if DeMarcus Lawrence does play, he's going to have some foam at the mouth because this isn't necessarily a fully healthy or, fully worked through / developed offensive line. Despite my critiques of the offensive philosophy, will the Giants' ground and pound style work? It very well could, and it very well might not. We've seen in games this season where the script has totally flipped. Seahawks and Lions, some of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, right? But they adjusted and they shut Saquon down. The Packers, the Jaguars, there were some other teams as well that were very, quote-unquote, good against the run. And then, when we faced them, they were just giving up some solid runs from Saquon Barkley. So, just do it wisely. Just do it wisely. Have some balance. Do it wisely. Factor in your blocking tight ends. That being Chris Myrick and any other offensive lineman you may use. And obviously that counters with the next question. How do the Giants use tight ends when it comes to the run? I'm not necessarily a fan too much of doing these 11 personnel sets when you have 3 wide receivers on the field. I mean, you're relying on receivers blocking A, B, and I understand, you're throwing that at a defense so they could cover guys and, put different personnel in, but at the same time, when they diagnose it being a run play, those DBs are going to get past our wide receivers. I don't really know any good blocker other than Kenny Galladay, so there's that. Who's the main target besides Darius Slayton? I find that to be Richie James this game. It could definitely be Lawrence Cage or Tanner Hudson, but I think it's going to be Richie James. I think he's going to be factored in like the first few weeks of the season. Will the Giants be prepared for a switch of offensive emphasis by Dallas? Of course, that means the pass. And this really goes with the other question as well that I have next. Will the Giants play soft zone defense due to cornerback injuries? It could very well go like last year when the Ravens had several injuries and Wink could stick a little bit to his scheme, or does he factor in and talk about the injuries, factor that in, and sticks to more of a zone approach? It could definitely happen. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be mad at it. I would just be mad at the fact that, we don't have any corners. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, but if you see soft zone, I wouldn't get mad at it because overall he is playing with lesser talent than Graham did, and Graham was more conservative. That was just a whole different approach. Can Jalen Smith step up against his former club? We're going to need linebackers in the running game. There's no, all these 3 safety sets and all this other stuff. That's not stopping Tony Pollard. That's not stopping Ezekiel Elliott. I think it's going to be really up to our linebackers this game. Obviously, Jalen Smith, if his somewhat speed can match up, along with Tate Crowder's with Pollard, that'd be great. But I really see Micah McFadden's youth and his speed matching up with Pollard. And then Zeke Elliott, I think Tate Crowder and Jalen Smith can take him on, but at the same time, you have to defeat your blocks, and that's not something the Giants linebackers have really done well this year. And then the last one, can the Giants get to the quarterback? That's not something they've done really well over the last few games that they faced Dallas. They got to the quarterback maybe like twice last year. The second time they played, the first time they played, I don't remember. The first time they played this year, they didn't get to the quarterback at all, which, is Cooper Rush. I don't know how you don't get to him. So you got to get to the quarterback. And I know, obviously, at some point we have to have a conversation about Kayvon Thibodeau and the way he's playing. He's got to show out in one of these games. He really does. And that arrow needs to keep pointing up, not flattening. We're not talking about flattening the curve here. We're talking about up, okay? So he needs to do some solid things, whether it's setting the edge, doing something as a first-round pick, because at the same time, I know people will say, well, the first few games due to injury, and I get that, and I know he's basically been a work in progress, and it's basically what we bought into with the ceiling and all. But at the same time, Jermaine Johnson, right, he was picked lower, and he has more production. But let's go to keys to win, if there's a chance at all. I'm going to say protect Daniel Jones. Now, I obviously have brought on some defensive emphasis with zone and a lot of these different things, but I think protecting Daniel Jones, giving him time, is going to really help balance out the offense and not making them go one-dimensional. Number 2 is stop the pass. Limit the pass, really, it should be. Because I just see the Giants playing zone. And once again, that is if they intend on throwing the football more than passing the football, or throwing the football more than they have in, the last few games. But once again, I'm just expecting the pass because Kellen Moore is going to see our depth chart and say, hey, listen, Detroit attacked this guy last week. Let's go after him again. So Giants better be prepared for that. But you can hide flaws by playing zone. And number 3, run it with Barkley and run wisely with Barkley. Obviously, You're not going to have a successful game every game with Saquon, whether it's rushing or doing this or that and the other thing. I would like to see him in the receiving game because I feel like he is a mismatch to different linebackers and different safeties. So Mike Kafka, please incorporate that if you want to score points. But when you run with him, you gotta be wise. You have to find a happy medium. You can't give away that you're running it. So I would maybe, just for shits and giggles' sake, to try to throw off the defense, put Gates in as the extra tight end, but do a max protect, play action. So, and you do that a couple of times, they say, okay, well, maybe they're not actually running it because Gates has been in a few times on passing downs as a pass protector. That's, once again, also if Feliciano is starting. So if Gates is starting at center, you have Jack Anderson as the extra tackle, you have Matt Parrott, or you have someone else. It all depends, but you have to be smart with running with Barkley. You don't want to give it away, but at the same time, you want to block efficiently on the interior and the exterior because they will stack the box. I'm not taking, the Dallas is 26th in rushing defense. Please. It's a week-to-week basis in the NFL, and teams adjust, and Dallas is a pretty good fucking team. But my prediction, it's pretty low, but I'm going to end off on a solid note, I say, talking about Thanksgiving and my favorite sides. But first, we have to get to the negative. I have the Cowboys winning 27-10. I think at the end of the day, we will consider it a blessing. They only put 27 on us with the injuries we've had in the secondary. But I don't think this Giants offense will be able to score many points. We weren't able to score points in the first time. But hey, listen, we'll see what happens. I'm going to ask y'all in the Premier chat. Now, I probably asked this on Boys in the Big Apple as well. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side? Now, also put in if you don't eat turkey on Thanksgiving, because that's one of my things. I eat turkey. Personally, to put in there, mashed potatoes is my favorite. I'm not a stuffing guy. Never have been. If mac and cheese is a part of it, I will take part. Not a sweet potatoes guy. But mashed potatoes, whether it's with butter or with gravy, I'll take it. I'm not a pie guy, so there's that. But just wanted to end it off on a nice note before we get to the interview with Tom Ryle, blogging The Boys, which is the SB Nation site covering the Dallas Cowboys. So we are now with Tom Ryle of blogging The Boys, the SB Nation site covering the Dallas Cowboys, the opponent on Thanksgiving. Tom, how are you feeling coming into this game?
A lot better after the Vikings game. That was maybe the most impressive all-around performance I've seen from this team in the 12 years I've been doing this at blogging The Boys. Now the question was that just a one-time bit of excellence, or are they going to be able to replicate that going into this weekend?
Definitely a very impressive win, of course, over the Vikings. Moving into it, just a general question to start off. How has Dak Prescott played since coming back from the injury? Obviously, the first time the Giants and the Cowboys played on primetime, that was Cooper Rush at quarterback. But how has Dak Prescott been playing lately?
Well, he's basically played 8 halves since coming back. The first half he played back against the Detroit Lions. It took him a while to get started. Then when the Cowboys came out of their bye, that half did not go so well. The rest of the time, he's played very well, except things got a little bit off track in the second half against the Green Bay Packers that led to the loss in that game. But overall, he's looking particularly sharp. And again, it was a real high point last Sunday when they went up against Minnesota. And if he's playing like that, he's going to be a hard guy to stop.
I definitely think so, especially with the injuries on the Giants' defensive side of the ball. Moving towards the running game a little bit, obviously, at least from what I saw on TV, that's how you guys beat the Minnesota Vikings. Has Pollard officially blown past Ezekiel Elliott as the number one back, or is it more of a two-back set?
I think the intent of the team is to use it as a two-back set with roles assigned. It's a little hard to be sure because Ezekiel Elliott may have been on a bit of a pitch count since he was coming off of missing 2 games due to injury. And so you're not really sure if what you saw is the actual plan going forward. But, as a Cowboys guy, I wish they would stick with it because they used Pollard. He was getting big chunk plays frequently. He's always been the real breakaway threat. And then they would bring Elliott in when they needed some real smash mouth football. He scored both of the touchdowns from the 1 yard line. I believe they were both on the 1 yard line, and converted one other 3rd and 1 just simply by going out and getting the 1.5 or 2 yards they needed. And he presents a little bit different challenge. There was an interesting comment from Coach Skip Pete, the running backs coach, that when Elliott's in, he's got a certain timing, and that teams start to get used to him. And then when Pollard comes in, he's just quicker, he's faster, and it throws the timing off, which I thought was a fascinating thing to look at. So I think they're going to continue going forward with the two-back rotation. It was interesting that they both had exactly 15 carries in the Vikings game. But Pollard was on the field for 39 offensive plays against only 21 for Elliott, which I think is really got some potential for the running game because Pollard was the receiving star of that game with 109 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Definitely. And talking a little bit more about the running game, but also incorporating the passing subject, how do you feel overall? Probably happy, but anyway, how do you feel overall despite that, you have Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz? How do you feel that Dallas has emphasized more of the run rather than the pass?
That seemed to be a big part of the plan coming in. Now, you always have to be cautious who you listen to and how they're talking because when Jerry Jones talks, you sometimes get a little different take on what things are going on than what the coaches, I think, are doing. But they always talked about funneling the offense through the run going into the season, which didn't exactly excite me. But now I kind of see that maybe they've got an idea of what to do, where the run is creating some focus and it maybe helps the passing game. I just know that as long as they've got both sides clicking, that it's great. But they have seen games where teams were able to kind of slow down the running attack, and now that they've got Dak back, you feel a little better about that. But it can falter a little bit, as we saw in the last quarter against Green Bay when the Cowboys couldn't do anything and putting more points up that could have gotten them to a win. So I think they're going to still want to make teams think they're running, with throwing in some first down play action plays sometimes just to try to steal a little bit something on the defense. Right now, though, as I said, it worked. It has kind of been working for the games where they've had both of the backs. So we'll just have to see if they wise up. They've steadily been increasing Pollard's workload all along. So that, from our viewpoint, is a hopeful sign that they're looking at them as more of, who do you prepare for? Well, you have to prepare for both of them in kind of equal doses.
Yeah, definitely. And going into more of the passing game, at least to open up the season, he was targeted a lot more. He was actually the leading receiver at some point. Noah Brown has kind of calmed down a little bit. Does that coincide with Michael Gallup returning? And has Gallup been 100% since coming back?
I think we're just now seeing Gallup getting to 100%. He started to show up, had a one really good catch against the Vikings. Prescott was spreading the ball around better than he has all season. You had several guys with 2, 3, 4 catches. and they weren't trying to force feed it all into CeeDee Lamb, which is something they need to avoid, because you don't obviously want the defense to know, here's the guy you stop, and you stop the passing game. So they completed passes to 10 different receivers. That's a very positive sign. Noah Brown had one really good long catch that set up a touchdown. I think Dak actually completed to 8 because they rolled Cooper Rush out in the fourth quarter, and he threw to like Jalen Tolbert, the rookie, who has not done much at all this year. And but it was good to see him spreading it around, because again, the more you complicate things for the opposing defensive coordinator, the better it is for your offense.
Yeah, definitely. And he didn't play in the Giants' first game, but what role does Dalton Schultz have in the offense? It doesn't seem like it's been as big as years prior.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe that's a good sign, because Schultz had started to become the security blanket guy, kind of in the way Jason Witten was for many years with Tony Romo. And I think that they just haven't needed to go to the security blanket as much this year. Schultz is still important. He still is quite good. Just as a side note, it's an interesting situation, though, because I believe he's in his contract year, or no, he's playing on the tag. I forgot. And now they've got to decide what to do. And they have 2 rookie tight ends who looked very good when they have gone to them, in Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. Hendershot was a undrafted free agent and has been a pleasant surprise. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I know you don't want to get into that, but the Cowboys have some interesting decisions to make with a whole bunch of players that are going to be free agents.
Definitely. And before we head into the defense, I just wanted to ask, because obviously you probably know better than me, in Cowboy world, and obviously they haven't come out with the official injury report. Is there anything out of the ordinary in terms of players that may not play on Thanksgiving? Like, I know DeMarcus Lawrence didn't practice due to a foot injury. Is he expected to go? Micah Parsons also had a knee and an ankle injury. Is he expected to go?
I'm pretty sure Parsons is. He's come out and said that he's good to go, and so I'm expecting to see him. Lawrence played through the injury. I think he's going to probably play through it again, and then they have the kind of mini bye from playing on Thursday and getting the extra few days off. So I think he'll go. What's interesting is they had like 5 guys show up on an illness report. I think Lawrence cropped up on that. Something's going around. They're not saying what it is. Nobody's mentioning the C word. But a lot of guys seem to be a little under the weather. That's something to watch. And at this point, nobody's really sure how that's going to shake out.
It's interesting that you guys have illnesses, because it seems like it's attacking us too. I mean, Andrew Thomas all of a sudden has an illness. He'll probably play. Graham Gano had an illness where, Sunday he had like 4 different IVs. There was another guy that was ill during the week. So, it's cold weather clearly is getting to everybody.
Yeah.
But moving to the defensive side of the ball, obviously the main attention of the defense and really opposing offenses in terms of game planning goes towards Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. But you also have 2 depth guys in Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler, who've had solid seasons. I think Dorrance has 7 sacks and 5 for Dante Fowler, which is the most he's had in a season since like 2019. And they've played well. How much of a relief has it been to have those key depth guys, meaning you can give Lawrence and Parsons rest on some downs?
Well, it's been great, and it's actually even better because their rookie Sam Williams has, when he's been on the field and limited snaps, he's looked very good. He's not sophisticated yet with his technique, but his power and speed is just getting him home sometimes. And like in the Vikings game, he didn't have a sack, but he had some tackles for a loss that can be just as important. And so, yeah, they come at you with multiple guys, Osi Odigizua also can provide pressure at the middle, and they can always bring people like Donovan Wilson and Jalen Kearse from the secondary on a blitz. So yeah, there's a reason they're leading the league in sacks right now, and I'd hate to be the quarterback lining up and looking at them because they're kind of a scary group.
Definitely, and that's the way I look at them. But I have just one curious question, and who knows? Maybe on Thursday, I'm jinxing it right now, and he just has an all-out game against the Giants. But why has Parsons never really impacted the game like he's had some of these other games where I think he had 2 sacks against the Vikings? He never really has had that game against the Giants yet. Is it because he's always playing on Andrew Thomas's side? What do you think is the story there?
There's a weird pattern. He either gets 2 sacks or none. It's just the way it's gone this season, and it's held up the whole season. And it's just kind of a matter of which week do you catch him on. I don't know if it's going to be an every other thing for him, or if he'll finally break the pattern and maybe get 1 sack this time. But that's kind of the beauty of it, because I think if teams hold him to no sacks, somebody else usually is getting through. That's been the case in most of the games. So it's a great luxury, and it's just like when you've got that really great one wide receiver or the great running back, it draws attention away and it lets other guys shine sometimes. So far that's been what's happening. If Parsons isn't getting to the quarterback, usually somebody else is. And the only exception really has been the Green Bay game, and we're still trying to figure out exactly why that went so badly, and hopefully they figured it out and won't happen again.
Moving to the game, 2 X factors for the Cowboys on Thursday, one offensively and one defensively.
Gosh. I think the X factor on offense is going to possibly be Michael Gallup. Will he really? Because he hasn't quite had his full on game. He hasn't done a lot really deep, which is what he was doing in years prior. And I think he's a guy to watch on offense. This might be the game where he finally gets on track and puts up some big numbers. The X factor on defense I'm going to give you is a guy that we've kind of been a little surprised by, and that's Leighton Vander Esch, because you guys have Saquon Barkley. That's going to be a big concern because the teams that have given the Cowboys problems have been good rushing teams, especially if the Cowboys don't jump out to a lead really quick and let the other teams use the running game, which they are a little bit vulnerable to, especially on the edges. That lets the other teams control the flow of the game and everything. But Vander Esch has been quietly having a very good season. They did not exercise his 5th-year option, signed him to a 1-year deal for less money. And yet he's been very solid. He's not spectacular, but, there were a couple runs where he just squared up with Dalvin Cook and stoned him right there where they made contact. So I think him against Barkley is going to be an X factor on defense.
And then moving to the Giants, and it's okay to pick the obvious, but 2 X factors to game plan for in terms of the Giants, one offensively and one defensively.
Oh gosh, I don't know much about your defense. I will say that offensively, I think it's very much going to be a case of who else is going to step up to catch the ball, because you guys are having a little bit of a problem with not having anybody out there that's really doing a great job as a receiver right now. And I don't mean to be picking on you about that, but I think it's kind of something you can see. And right now, Darius Slayton is your best option. I think if somebody else steps up, that's going to be an X factor for you. And I think maybe for your defense, I guess I'd say maybe will Thibodeau step up and get some good pressure on Prescott. because he's been very good at avoiding sacks with his mobility and everything. He's been getting some good protection, and I think if you're going to really slow him down, you're going to have to just get some extra pressure. So if somebody can come in and get through, the offensive line for the Cowboys, frankly, exceeded my expectations after they lost Tyron Smith in the preseason. I thought it was going to be a real problem, and yet they put it together. They've been all right, and now they're working Tyler Smith, who's played left tackle as a starter. They've been moving him into left guard and putting Jason Peters in at left tackle, which is something to keep an eye on, whether they try going to that some more than just in the kind of garbage time to get Smith ready for when Tyron comes. It's very confusing. You have Tyler Smith and Tyron Smith, both of them your left tackle players. When Tyron comes back, and they're saying he's going to get back before the end of the season, the thought is they're going to kick Tyler Smith back to guard. And frankly, he's got some juice as a guard that I think would really be interesting. So, that's something that I have to try to work on, is getting through on one side or the other, because on the other side, Terrence Steele has been much better, I think, than we expected at right tackle. So if they can find a way to get around at least one of the tackles, get Dak a little bit off schedule, that could be very important.
And then one more question before we get out of here. It's a fun question, but I just want to know your thoughts on it. Do you think that the Cowboys will land Odell Beckham Jr.?
Oh, that's a hard thing to say, because we've been through this dance so many times before where the Cowboys are interested, and then it just, nothing comes of it. Partly because I think every agent in the NFL tries to get the Cowboys into the conversation at some point when they're trying to get a new contract for their guy. But it feels a little different because everybody from Jerry Jones on down to the players themselves who are talking to Odell and doing a little bit of recruiting are acting like this is serious. Uh, I think it would be. I think Beckham would bring just a little bit of spice into the receiving core that could help the Cowboys into the playoffs. So hopefully they can not just be a one and done thing. Right now the Cowboys and the Giants, and this has been a long time since we've been able to say this, but they're both sitting in good shape to make the playoffs, no matter who wins or loses this game. And neither of them want to go and just get, have one game and be out. And I think Beckham might be important for that. I think the management kind of understands that. I'm pretty sure the coaching staff is all on board with the idea. So it's just a matter if Stephen Jones, the executive vice president and Jerry's son, is willing to part with some of his precious pie that he always talks about having to carve up to pay players and bring Beckham on. And I think they should do what is necessary. Obviously, they can't just meet any price, but I think they need to be a lot more flexible about how much they will pay for him than they have been about other players in the past.
Definitely. And then, Tom, where can people find you, your social media, and your work?
I'm on Twitter for as long as Twitter is alive. It's at Tom Ryle BTB, and Ryle is spelled with a Y. TOMRYLE BTB. And I'm at Blogging the Boys. I write about 5 articles a week. And the first one I always write is I do the game recap that goes up just right after the final whistle. So if you want to see what I've got to say, and I also have a podcast that is co-hosted by a gentleman named Roy White. Actually, Roy does the work putting the podcast up, but he couldn't resist naming it after me. It's called Riled Up. It's on the SBN Podcast Nation. So anybody that wants to drop in and listen to some more of my bloviating, please tune in and give us a listen.
And then to end it off, because, well, why not? Because of the week we're in. First part of the question, do you think the Cowboys will take Thanksgiving victory? Second question, if you had to pick, what's your favorite Thanksgiving side?
Do I think the Cowboys are going to win? Was that the first part of it? Yeah, yeah. I feel pretty confident about this. Um, but the one thing in the back of my head is the Cowboys have lost 3 in a row on Thanksgiving now, and they're needing to buck the trend. I actually have an article going up Thursday morning before the game that talks about that. Um, and so that's the one thing that gives me concern. It's a division game. Weird things happen within the division when they play. But if this goes according to all the indicators, I think the Cowboys will win. And my favorite Thanksgiving side is a really good dressing, a nice sausage dressing or something. If you've ever had one of those.
Interesting one, but Tom, I thank you for coming on and taking some time out of your night and having a discussion. Obviously, Giants Cowboys, they play at 4:30 on Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we will see you next time.